welcome to A Parent's Guide for Raising Happy, Healthy, and Resilient Children. This is presented in partnership with Beach Cities Health District and South Bay Mommies and Daddies. I'm Laura Nickerson. So excited because tonight we're talking about practical life skills for kids, teaching kids early on about the importance of responsibility. In order to have this very important conversation, we had to bring in one of the best on the experts that we're having on this show. Stella Reed is here. She's a family and parent coach, a nanny matchmaker, and nanny trainer. And you might know her from the very well known show, Nanny 911. Stella, thank you so much for making the time. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, these are really important questions for us right now because we're all sort of struggling as parents to come out of this last phase of the year, move on to whatever happens next. And we're looking at what practical life skills we should be focusing on first for our children. What would you define practical life skills as being?
Practical life skills is the same for adults as it is for children. It's, everyday life activities, especially with children, preparing them for each step along the way, each transition through life.
Now, would you define practical life skills though? Because when I think of that, I think of, I don't know, fixing a car or learning how to walk. But what are we talking about as far as the life skills that mean responsibility? Is that chores? Where do we start with that?
Let's back it up a little bit and let's talk about a specific age range. So
Mm.
obviously life skills are learned. So let's talk about toddlers. That would be as simple as getting dressed or washing your hands or brushing your teeth or you know helping put your own pajamas on. It doesn't have to be necessarily carpentry skills or being a mechanic on a car. It's starting out at, if you will, ground zero.
And where should we be looking to start those kinds of things? Let's say with a toddler, once they start walking, maybe once they get to be about 2 or 3 years old, should we be trying to move them into a phase of more independence with those kinds of simple skills?
Yeah, I mean, once upon a time, I would have been quite vehement of telling you of a certain age you should be starting something. I've calmed down along the years. It's really about what works for you and your family, not about what I'm going to denote as when you should start it. But my invitation to start it would be, yeah, the toddler years. So yes, walking. Definitely. But things like, brushing teeth, putting PJs on, packing bags, putting toys away. I would be looking at 2 to 3 years to be doing that sort of thing.
Is it important that we start this at that age?
I mean, I think it is. But again, it's what works for you and your household. It depends.
Mm.
There are cultural things, there are family things. But I think, the earlier you start, the better, the more prepared you are for the next phase.
And when you start at that young age, let's say the toddler range, it's always really difficult to figure out, do we reward them? Do we encourage them? Do we give consequences if they don't do that? What are some of the first steps into, let's say, teaching your child to, I don't know, get dress themselves? Is it encouragement?
Yeah, definitely encouragement and lead by example. But I mean, initially they're not going to be able to do that themselves. But just to back it up a little bit as well, you know, when you're talking about chores or things that are expected, um, when it goes to older children, you're looking at situations where you just do things because you're a member of the family. The
Mm.
life skills as far as being a toddler then progress to bigger things of being a functioning member of the household. But I think if you lead by example in anything you do, you're setting a good tone.
Mhm. Are we generationally, as we hover over our children, as I do as a parent, and I'm 100% helicopter mom. I don't deny it. But are we doing ourselves a disservice by doing too much for them for too long?
Absolutely. I think if you can just sort of accept the fact that, as parents initially, we really do nurture. We love, we cuddle, um, but that can turn into a level of coddling, which you want to move away from. What you're looking to do is foster a level of independence with your children. It's not your job to keep them next to you for their whole life. It's your job as a parent to prepare them for life. So yeah, I think as parents we do a disservice, myself included. I have a 9-year-old that sometimes gets away with murder. So people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I'm definitely in the same. I'm definitely in the same brigade.
It's very hard to do. It's very hard to not just want to take care of them. But I agree with you. It's incredibly important that we look at preparing them for real life. So let's just talk about it in phases a little bit. You start off with a toddler, and you mentioned some very basic practical life skills like brushing teeth, getting dressed, washing their hands. Then, what's sort of phase two of that? At what age should they be moving into slightly more independence?
I apologize if my hands are all over the place, but I have a momnesia brain and I like to be prepared. So I did write some stuff and print it off. So, the 2 to 3 is, being able to put your toys away, being able to help dress yourself. Things like putting your clothes in the wash hamper, helping to clear your plate after a meal. Helping set the table. Look, you're not going a 2 to 3 year old's not going to do that necessarily by themselves, but they're going to be able to assist in that.
Mhm.
Then, when we get to 4 and 5, things like helping feed the pets, simple chores like helping to dust. I'm sure there are going to be some people out there tonight thinking, oh my God, she's crazy. Oh my gosh, she's crazy. But, if you make this fun, it's not about, this is not forced medicine, but it is fun medicine, if that makes sense. So, the 4 to 5, definitely they can brush their teeth by themselves, wash their face by themselves, um, you know, take toys out, put toys back. Um, let's talk about, sort of like age 6 to 7. My boy Mason's 9 now, but at 6 to 7 he was exploring, doing things in the kitchen like helping to put the groceries away and wash dishes and do some food prep. I mean, he's 9 now and he can cook his own little omelette. um helping to make the bed, straighten things up. And it just progresses from there. um by 9 years old, and all joking apart, Mason doesn't always do this, but you can be folding your own clothes. You can definitely be putting, your own laundry away. um you can help create a grocery list. um you can have sort of interactions with money. um I laugh about money now though, because I feel like we're becoming a cashless society, but definitely understand money and what it can buy.
Hmm. These are great steps. I'm wondering at what point, let's say that you do it all in a really easy way. You're encouraging, you're showing by example, you're making it fun, you're sort of incorporating that into the structure of your daily life. But some kids are a lot more resistant to doing what their parents tell them to do or defiant. Uh, what would be the next step? Say that you're encouraging and making it fun and that's not really working. What would be some suggestions to work through that?
So one of the specifics for that is to have family rules, sort of the
Mm,
rules of the house, and with that for me would be a chore list. So it's also knowing the consequences if you don't complete your chore list. So the other part of that is, Laura, some things I think you just do because you're a member of the family, and then some can be compensated. So, for example, it could be monetary compensation, or it could be, this might be a hot button, but it could be screen time. So, you can earn screen time if you've done your additional chores. But I really do think it has to be, natural consequences, rewards, or deficits. So if you get things done, I mean, it's like you and I going to work, or our partner's going to work. If you go to work, you get rewarded. If you don't, you don't earn the money to go on those nice holidays. So it's definitely a reward system, for it's natural consequence and reward system. So it's motivation. And again, each person, the people tuning in are definitely, they're going to be the experts on their children. I'm generalizing, but if that being able to have 30 minutes on Fortnite or whatever video game your kids into at the moment, then that's what you'd use as leverage, quite frankly.
I like the idea of leverage and motivation. In fact, my kids sometimes say, "Oh, you're just going to make me do something if you're going to give me this treat or whatever it may be." And I'm thinking, yeah, welcome to life.
Right,
So,
exactly.
and if we start building this out early, is it potentially paving the way to be a little bit easier as they get into a little bit more of a independent phase? So, for example, if we have these family rules structured out from the toddler years and then they grow into that knowing that that's always the structure that they need to follow, uh, I'm assuming that would potentially ease the road for us as they start to, like I said, become more defiant and argue with you more.
Absolutely. All joking apart, I know some 2 to 3 year olds that are better at brushing their teeth than 9 to 10 year olds. It's not just starting out early, it's remaining consistent. So again, if you do have those reward charts or those accountability situations, then it just becomes, again, I want to choose my words carefully, but it's forced medicine, but without being forceful. Just, hey, this is the natural progression, and this is what you need to do to get to the next step. So yeah, I think the earlier you start, the better, and also remain consistent.
Consistency is one of the hardest things, especially now with our schedules being very upended, a lot of things reopening around here in the South Bay area. Schedules are changing daily with schools and things like that. How do we as parents navigate keeping those schedules consistent, those expectations consistent when the world around us is so inconsistent?
I mean, that's a really good point, because even before COVID, I think the majority of us can say that we aren't always consistent. But what I would want parents to be mindful about is that even if you fall off the wagon, per se, then you can get back on it. So you could say, hey,
Mm.
over the weekend, we didn't get this, and this done, but it's Monday today and we're going to start again. So it's given them enough notice that you're recognizing they didn't get away with it, that you're
Right.
recognizing that you fell off the wagon, and we need to sort of get back in sync. um I think for parents, it's the same. It's like planning your day, like blocking time. If you can all collectively as a family get together at the end of the day, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes to do those chores, those family tasks, it's better than not doing them at all.
I do a lot of that. I'm going to start on Monday with dieting and exercising too. So I'm familiar with that Monday morning restart, if you will.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, I mean, we all do that. We all have to, make mistakes and get a little off path and then try to get back on again. And that's probably a good lesson for our kids to see as well, which is not to just give up and stop trying when something doesn't go quite the way that they had hoped. I mean, this year of all years, I think our children are learning a lot about that. And that's probably a very valuable and very practical life skill going forward. But as we go into, let's say, even beyond, so now they're 6 or 7, they're getting up to 9, 10, and we're looking at allowances. How do allowances play into this? Because we've had that argument many times at my house. Is the allowance payment for the chores, allowance just given to them so they understand money? What are some of your recommendations?
Again, I don't think there are hard and fast rules, and it really has to be what works for your family. This is really something that you would sit down with your partner, with your husband, your wife, your partner, and you would agree on. But I think it needs to be relative. It needs to sort of match the chore. Um, so I always think about feeding the pets, or well, let's use pets as an example, because I'm going off this at a tangent here. But my rule for families is, if you have a pet, if you're letting your children have a pet, then they should be responsible for taking care of the pet. So I just want to throw that tangent in there. But I think definitely I like allowance because you've earned it. I just don't like, to me, if something's free, it has no value, if that makes sense.
Mm,
So
hmm.
I'm old school in that regard. I like to see that, the fruits of our labor have been rewarded.
I like that philosophy. Plus, then it prepares them for what life is really like. You do the work and some of the things you have to do anyway. And that's something that I do in my family is, there are base chores and expectations that don't have anything to do with allowance or money. But then there are things that they do because they get their allowance and they have these chores. And then if they don't do them, they don't get their allowance. And welcome to the rest of your life with
the
that one.
the the problem that sorry the problem that
No,
I've
please.
come across quite often is that parents then want to control how the child spends the allowance. I mean, I've been
Uh,
guilty of that myself, but really, if they've earned that money, then they should be able to spend it accordingly. Obviously, nothing crazy, but within reason. If they want to save up for that really expensive pair of shoes, then why not? That is it. That is setting them up for life. And to go back to the chores again, yes, some things are just expected of you, in my opinion, as a member of the family. Like, nobody's rewarding me for doing the dishes. I get to do the dishes because I'm a mom, you know? Um, so yeah, I'm like you. I like, some things are just, you just have to do them, and some of them you get rewarded for. But I think that's a big part of parenting, in that you have to figure out what that looks like, and not just wing it, because when you wing it, then you get into huge levels of negotiations. Well, can I trade this for this? No, you do have to walk the dog.
If only half the lawyers in this world were as good as our children at negotiating and trying to get out of things. Seriously, the entire world would be different. But I'm also wondering too, I think a lot of parents have avoided some of these pitfalls, but some of them are still stuck in this. How do we look at sort of the stereotypical chores for the different genders? So a lot of times, in different generations, the girls would do more of the cooking or the cleaning, and the men would do more of the, I don't know what, cleaning, mowing the lawn or whatever it may be. Do you feel like we do a service to our children of either gender to teach them everything?
I really believe in teaching them everything, and I don't like to put a line down the gender separation. But also, I want to be mindful that, culturally, it has to also be what your family, denotes. I don't want to throw my weight around and say what I think you should be
Hmm.
letting your boys do, and what you should be letting your girls do. But I do think it is a disservice, if you don't let them. Like, I would like to see, boys cooking. I do. Predominantly chefs are men, and I would also like to see some fabulous auto mechanics, that are women. So again, though, I wouldn't want to pressure anybody into saying, "Hey, here's how I think it should be," but I definitely think that's a bigger conversation for you and your partner. Um, Especially with culture.
I think that's a great point. And I think the point you made about having the conversation, I think that's really the point for you and your family is to make sure that it's not things that are unconscious, but they are conscious choices for whatever suits the family that you're in. But is it also something that we can manage and negotiate when we are in this position right now where we get so overwhelmed and so tired? And as parents, so many things are on our plate. Where does this fall in the daily priority? Is it more important than, other things, school, for example, physical health, eating right, all the things that we're told as parents we're supposed to be on top of at the end of a very long day? Where does this fall on the priority list?
I think I think all of the above. Again, I keep I've changed my tactics over the years. I used to be very opinionated and told you how I thought it should be. I've softened with age and with having a child myself. But I think it is important, and I think it's really important, especially when parents are feeling overwhelmed and you do have children that are capable of helping you. Um, I don't want anybody coming at me and saying, oh, she was encouraging, hard labor for these young kids. That's not what I'm saying, but they are capable of helping out. Um, and also, I think, with everybody's sort of mental state of mind at the moment, mental welfare, that if everybody's supporting everybody in the family and a little bit goes a long way, that if even if the kids aren't, doing the dishes and putting the dishes away, but they're helping mum and dad, um, I think that's super important.
Is it too late ever to start being the parents we want to be? Is it too late to start with building up these routines and structures and family rules?
Um, Not to be scary, but I think it can. I think it can get to be too late. I think once you're hitting sort of teenage years, especially now you're sort of navigating the world with, junior adults in some regard. Um, through my education to become a nanny, I really believe that 0 through 7 are the formative years. So I think, as much as you can do in those years will go a lot farther. I sort of think of it like compound interest. The more you invest in the younger child, the more it's gonna pay off in the long run, if that makes sense.
It does. It definitely does. And someone gave me great advice back when my kids were really little. They said, proceed how you want things to be. If you want it to always be a struggle, if you want, for example, it always to be a 2 hour bedtime or whatever, then by all means keep doing that. But at some point, if you want that to be different, you have to start modeling that, and sooner versus later, it's a lot easier. Do you see, with the work that you do with the parents that you work with and the families that you work with, do you see that that's one of the bigger issues that parents are having these days, that kind of early structure?
Yeah, actually, I don't think it's the early structure. I think it's what I said earlier. I think it's the the lack of consistency. Again, repeating myself, I think people fall off the wagon and they don't get back on. Like, they
Mm.
had great routines with their younger children. Um, they were starting to foster that level of independence. But then when kids started to resist, they started to give in. It's kind of like, I'm gonna be held really accountable for this one, Laura. But it's like sometimes with your partner, it's easier to do it yourself than to get them to do it. And I think that sort of analogy plays in with children. Like, you get sick of asking or sick of telling, whatever your parenting style is, and you just ultimately end up doing it yourself. Well, then you've set the tone. You've set the tone to say, oh, it's okay that you don't do it, because if you nag me too much, I'm just going to give in and I'm going to do it myself. So it comes back to it. I don't really believe it comes back to the early years teaching. I believe it comes back to the lack of consistency.
I feel like every parent listening right now is going, uh-huh, oh yeah, I've done that. Oh yeah, I've done that. I was already just thinking of, oh, I did that. I did that with the dishes all the time. I'm always picking up the extra things. It is a very good reminder that we have to realize how those tiny little things add up and affect our children and what they're looking at, from us as a model and a role model. Um, so we talked about this a little bit. I want to dig in a little bit further. Um, when we get to these points, like you said, where there's a lot of resistance, so much so that you just want to give in and throw in the towel and do it yourself, what are some skills or tips that you can give us on how to sort of work through that in a consistent way?
Um, I mean, it goes into a sort of a bigger piece of, if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed, and you are going to cave, you're going to fall off the wagon, or you're going to lose your temper, then actually take a time out for yourself and actually let your children know, I'm getting frustrated, I'm getting angry. This is not going to end well. I'm going to take a break. You hit the nail on the head earlier. You said, reset. I call it recalibrate. Go off, take a minute, and then come back to the situation. But always, as I said, repeating myself, if you've let things fall by the wayside, please get back on track, but let them know, hey, this didn't get done, that didn't get done, I let it slide, I was tired, but tomorrow we are going to get back on with our chores and our routine. But again, leading by example, not losing your mind, not screaming, not throwing an adult tantrum, which I know we all can do, but just,
Oh, yeah.
setting the tone to say, hey, I'm going into the other room. I'm going to calm down, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about this.
Mhm. And what if we come back and we talk about that and you're dealing with let's say a toddler or maybe a 3, 4, or 5-year-old in the midst of their own temper tantrum and their own, I'm not going to do it, Daddy, I'm going to throw a big fit. Any suggestions for how we live through that moment? Now we're calm. How do we get them to be calm and then move forward from there?
Well, it's not your job to calm them down, Laura. You've got to meet them where they're at. Um, express to them that they're angry, they're frustrated. Get down to their eye level, and sometimes just sit and wait it out. Um, I saw a video on the internet some time back, and I thought it was just genius. The dad of the toddler, he just sat there. He just sat there at the side of the toddler, made sure he was safe, but just sat there and waited it out. I mean, we're all allowed to get angry.
Yeah.
It's a feeling, it's an expression. Um, just let them calm down, and then talk it through after the event once they've calmed down. But it's not our job to calm them down.
So how long have you been in this profession for how long at this point?
Oh, I'm so old. It's terrible. 30, 32 years I've been working with families in some shape or form.
How do you think that parents have changed in the course of that time, or parenting has changed in the course of that time?
It's funny. I've had to go back and apologize to a lot of people since I did the show Nanny 911, because, as I said, I was very opinionated. I've been guilty of this myself. I'm saying very guilty, but not very, but guilty. Um, we parents have tended to be children's best friend. We're not there to be their best friend. We're there to be their parent and their mentor and their role model. um, and I think that's how it's changed. People will say to me, oh, I'm my child's best friend. I'm like, well, you're not going to get any accolades from me for that, because the biggest void in there is, um, how can you discipline your best friend? It doesn't. Those two don't go hand in hand. So, um, I would say that piece. We've become our kid's best friend.
And you kind of already answered this a little bit. How have you changed in your techniques and styles over the course of that time?
I have a 9-year-old. I've met my match. We call him the smiling assassin, which people have asked me to not label him that. Um, my husband would joke that I need Nanny 911 sometimes. Um, I've the piece that you lose sight of is the emotional piece. When you're on the outside looking in, you lose sight of the emotional piece. Um, I'm not as strict as I used to be, but that's okay. I have coaches too.
Well, I think that's actually a very lovely statement because none of us are perfect. None of us can follow the rule book on parenting and do it to the perfect degree. And even if we do, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that our children turn out to be rocket scientists or leave the house before they're 30, all the things that we're dreaming of. But it is nice to know that there are some general guidelines and rules that really do help guide us along the way and shape that relationship. What would you say if you could give parents right now, let's say your top five or top three tips on how to keep their children in a structured environment? What would those be?
Um, First of all, my reset, my recalibrate would be sit down. If you're in a if you're married or in a relationship, um, to sit down with your other half per se and really figure out what parenting looks like. We spend more time deciding what vacation we're going to take or what car we're going to drive or what minivan than we do defining our role as parents. So I would do that. Um, I would say be consistent. Once you've really set the tone on how it's going to be as consistent as you possibly can. And I think particularly now, for to be kind to yourself, like to not beat yourself with twigs. I encourage people, I invite them to sort of beat themselves with feathers. Don't be too hard on yourself. These have been very, very trying times. um and I think a fourth one would be to have some fun with your kids. Really have some fun.
Yeah, that is really important. It has been so hard through the course of this year with emotions being so high, and not just for us, for everybody, especially the kids. And then we look at sort of the daily structure or the daily goals that we had for our family, and sometimes those have to go out the window because your child is sad or lonely or depressed or angry or a million of those things that all of us have been feeling through the course of the last year or so. Um, how do we weigh that against the long-term effects of getting kind of loosey-goosey while our kids are going through maybe a more emotional time?
I don't think you really can weigh it up. I don't think you can sort of until you get to it. I don't think you know what it cost you. But I think in the moment, if you really believe that whatever you're doing, your child needs you more, without being played, because there is an element of that for sure. As I said, people are the experts on their child, not me. Um, but um, I, I don't think you can. I don't think you can put a value on it more. It's really more in the moment of knowing what you really think is more important.
Right. And I think overall for all of us, the most important thing was get through this, healthy. So many people did not move
Yeah.
forward as a family and look at some of those upsides that people have found from having time with their family. A lot of people being able to be home and lose that commute and all the activities and things that our kids get really wrapped up in. It's nice to have that quality family time, although it does definitely bring open to light some of those holes in there. One thing that I've discovered in my family, because we're not older parents, but I guess we weren't 20 when we had kids. And as we age and our children age, we have a really hard time remembering the consequences that we have laid out. So
Right.
I we've tried things like whiteboards. Do you have any sort of practical like consequence or rule sheets, poster boards? What's your go-to technique there?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, over the years, I've worked with families with reward charts, and keeping check of things. Um, but I think I really think if you don't follow through with the consequence, and I'm not talking about, we're not talking corporal punishment here. We're not talking about, I'm not talking about spanking your kids, but just following through. I think that's why I keep harping on about the consistency. If you don't follow through, then you're doing them a disservice. So it's really more about you as a parent sort of disciplining yourself more to follow through, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really parent training. Is that when you're working with families, do you find that that's more of what you're doing really is training the parents on how to
So I
follow
laugh
guidelines?
because because I'm a parent myself now. Um, yeah, people will say, we want you to come and fix the kids. My kid's really this or my kid's really that, and I have to sort of put a disclaimer in there initially and say it won't be ultimately about the kids. It will ultimately be about how you're parenting. And some people are in very big resistance to that. But ultimately that is what it's about. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we are the parent, and without being too harsh, we are in control. We decide what's best for our children, not our children.
Yeah. Yes. Great, great words of wisdom. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching right now are very curious as to how they can connect with you. What are the best places to find you and all that you're doing?
I live in the South Bay, so you might bump into me in the grocery store, but the best place to get a hold of me is at nannystella.com. I have another business now called Nannyology, which is really more about the actual matchmaking side of, nannies and families. But for parents who want help with, coaching, that's at nannystella.com.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared with us tonight. I know so many parents are going to take away a lot of value from that. I know I do as well. I'm going to go home and start on Monday and be more consistent. I want to
I'm
thank
gonna
all of you
start
for.
on Monday again myself.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you for joining me, for all of you for joining us tonight. If you are in the South Bay and you haven't joined the South Bay Mommies and Daddies Facebook group, you are missing out. It's such a great resource to connect with families in the area. And again, if you want to learn more about the Beach Cities Health District, visit their website, which is bchd.org. I'm Laura Nickerson. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And everyone, go out there and start that Monday fresh. Bye.